The federal government has said that state governments are now to bear the cost of the electricity subsidy along with it. The Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, Tanimu Yakubu, made this known on Monday in Abuja. Yakubu spoke at the opening of the workshop on the 2026 post-budget preparation using government-integrated financial management system. He disclosed that President Bola Tinubu gave the directive. Joining us on the show to discuss the latest directive from the president that states share electricity bill payments with the federal government is Nick Agule, an energy expert. Good morning, and you're most welcome to the morning show.
Good morning in the studio in Lagos, and good morning to our viewers globally. I'm happy to be here.
Great to have you, sir.
Okay, Nick Agule. I don't have a problem with the president saying that state governments have to take part of the electricity bill. That's the removal of the payment of subsidy on electricity. After all, we have the Electricity Act 2024, which now gives states powers to be involved in the generation, transmission, management of the electricity sector. I think that's the core point. So with authority should come responsibility. And I believe that the president is right in this particular regard. Where do the states have the capacity, the resources? That may be the question. Do you agree with my own reading, or you think that there are other issues that are involved in this? Otherwise, within the principle in the Electricity Act 2024, it will look like the federal government is right, but are the states capable?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. I agree with you. I align my views with you to say that now that the states, through the Electricity Act that was signed in 2023 by President Tinubu, have a responsibility to create electricity markets in their domains, they should also come to the table about this subsidy matter. And it should not only be states, it should be the local governments as well. So this should be a subsidy that is charged to as like a first-line charge on the federation account. However, the government seems to be solving the symptoms, which is deal with the accumulated debt in the electricity sector over time, instead of attacking the cause. Because we need to ask the question, what is causing this debt? What is actually happening that we now hear that Gencos are owed 4 trillion naira, and we have a subsidy of 1.2 trillion naira in the MTEF document for 2026-2028. Why so? Why is the government not subsidizing the telecom services, for instance? And that is where the question is. That's the real issue. If I can demonstrate to our viewers what is actually happening in the electricity sector, if you give me a minute, I'll do that. Assuming the power station in Egbin generates 1,000 megawatts of electricity. The 1,000 megawatts of electricity does not end up in the market. And what is the reason for that? Maybe 300 megawatts is not evacuated out of Egbin. It is totally stranded at the power station. What is the reason for that? Because there's no transmission capacity to carry it. Now, 700 megawatts makes it into the grid. That is transmission. And by the time the grid transports that 700 megawatts to Abuja, where I am speaking from, to sell in the market, maybe only 500 megawatts arrived. What happened to 200 megawatts? They are lost because of bad infrastructure, aging equipment, and all of that. That's why you call technical losses, gone because of the equipment. Then 500 megawatts arrives in Abuja. The Abuja Distribution Company, that is AEDC, quickly rejects 150 megawatts. They were not taking it. Why are they not taking 150 megawatts? Because they have not invested to expand the distribution network to be able to take all of the 500 megawatts that have come from Egbin. Now the 350 megawatts that they now take, They now put it in the market. When they put it in the market, they are only able to build 250 megawatts. What happened to the 100 megawatts? The 100 megawatts is either stolen or it is lost through a poor distribution network again. So that is what you call the commercial losses. Then the 250 megawatts that has been built, the bill sent to consumers, maybe only 160 megawatts have been paid into the bank. What happened to the 90 megawatts? The 90 megawatts are customers who have refused to pay their bills. Now, 1,000 megawatts were generated in Egbin. Only 160 megawatts is money in the bank. The difference is what is causing this problem. That's where the debt is coming from. So even if President Tinubu solves the accumulated debt now, because the fundamental structural issues in the power sector have not been sorted, the debt will continue to come. Egbin will continue to generate 1,000 megawatts and only 160 megawatts will enter into the bank account. How are we going to solve the problem? The answer is simple. President Jonathan in 2013 privatized the electricity sector. But he did it in a very bad way, and that's what is causing this problem. What did he do? He privatized the generating companies and privatized the distribution companies. But he did not do anything with the transmission company. Initially, they gave it to Manitoba in Canada, and then they took it back into government coffers. So that transmission bottleneck, because the government does not have money to modernize and expand the transmission capacity, is responsible for the first 300 megawatts that did not even leave Egbin. It is also responsible for the 200 megawatts that were lost through the transmission grid. And Nigerians are made to pay for that. That is the cost of the high tariff that we are paying. And then it comes to the distribution company in Abuja. The disco licenses were awarded to companies that have no known history in the power sector. They had no experience, they had no managerial capacity, they had no technical capacity, they had no financial capacity. They scrambled for these licenses. And they don't have the money to invest. How can they be waiting to take money from tariffs to invest? Nobody does that. Because if you look at the telecoms, for instance, when the MTNs and co got the licenses, they first brought in their capital, either equity or debt capital, and put in over $100 billion first, before they now started providing telecom services to Nigeria, who are talking and paying them back. How much have the operators in the power sector put in? They haven't put in anything. And Nigerians are just being strangulated with habits. There's something I will say now that will shock Nigerians before I give way. I pay for electricity in the United Kingdom, where I have a home. I pay for electricity in Nigeria, where I have a home. I'm paying far more for electricity in this Abuja than I pay in London. And yet in London, I get 247, 365 electricity non-stop.
That's interesting. That's interesting, but based on your experience as to paying, because I know that utility bills in the UK is quite expensive. But let me ask you a question around the state's capacity to pay. Now, this move by the federal government is to address, the debts and well, not just legacy debts, but ensuring that the states take responsibility and maybe might also begin to push for cost-reflective tariff. But in the interim, do the states have capacity to pay, or would it further make the problem worse for these companies who are already being owed in large sums? Because only in 2024, there was a report around 20 states owing electricity bill, and not being able to pay up. So what is the capacity, and would it not just further exacerbate the challenges?
Thank you so very much, Ayo. First and foremost, I have done the analysis. I can share it with you offline, because minimum wage in Nigeria can only attract 350 units of electricity on band A, whereas we attract a minimum wage in the UK, we attract 7,500 units of electricity. So the Nigerian consumer is worse off even at that level. So coming to the state's capacity to pay, the states won't have capacity to pay. Yes, the states are drawing more from the federation account, but this subsidy, this so-called subsidy, first and foremost, let me say that there is no need for this subsidy. If the President Tinubu's government goes back to that flawed privatization process in 2013 and fixes it, there will be no need for subsidy in the electricity sector. We are not paying subsidy in telecoms. That's the same thing that will happen, because telecoms was done well, was given to competent people, and they are now giving us telephone services at far cheaper rate than NITE was giving us. So,
not really.
So the state, okay, yes.
Not really. Electricity sector and telecoms is quite different. The infrastructure input cost in the electricity sector and telecom setup cost is very different. So I don't like it when we make the analogy of, oh, we got telecoms right. Electricity is different. You have a far more threshold of investment in electricity than telecoms. So let's not make that comparison. The point I wanted to finish up your point, but I just needed to address that comparison. Finish up your point. I think it's not a fair comparison.
Okay, so I was coming to... thank you, Rufai. I hear people say this thing, that telecoms is different from electricity. The way I see it, these are two services that need investment, infrastructure, and then services. That's the sequence. You put in money, you expand the infrastructure, and then get the services done. In telecoms, the Nigerian government company called NITEL, they were receiving budgetary allocations, but they were not putting the infrastructure in place. So they were only able to provide 500,000 active lines to Nigerians. But when the MTNs and Co came in, with their $100 billion put in, they expanded telephone availability to over 220 million lines today. So even at a lower tariff, they are making far more money than what NITEL was doing. The same thing will happen in electricity. If we go back and fix that flawed privatization of 2013 and competent operators take over this sector, they will bring in their money and put into the sector, expand our output from the measly 5,000 megawatts to probably 50,000 megawatts. And at 50,000 megawatts, Rufai, even at a fraction of the current tariff, there will still be liquidity in the sector. So nobody will be talking about illiquidity. So to land on the states, I say that the states will not afford this because, number one, it was not part of their budgetary provisions. They didn't expect that this kind of bill will be landed on their table. So the federal government should just take steps to ensure that we should fix the privatization so that this issue of subsidy will not arise. I like the point that Dr. Abati made at the beginning. If the states are now being faced with this heavy bill, let it now be a trigger for them to go back to their states and start creating their own electricity market. Many states have not done anything with the Electricity Act. They've done nothing. Okay. So this now should be a painful reality for them to go and do what needs to be done. Okay,
it goes back to the cash, and that was the argument I was trying to make, and it's as if you didn't still get it. I'm not talking about, federal government was running nights, no. The argument is the entry cost for electricity. Okay, how much do you think it is to build a 300 megawatt power station?
It's expensive. I know that. I'm an energy expert.
No. How much? No, I'm just asking you. I'm just asking you the going rate in the industry.
I don't have that data. I can't give you that data. But even if it is $300 million, you need the capital to put in.
No, I'll give you the going rate. Okay. The going rate is about $450 to $500 to $600 million. That is minus. You will now build distribution infrastructure. That's another cost. If you are to bid for a telecom license, your entry cost will probably be maybe 100, 200 million to get your licensing in. Then once you have one cell, your base channel, but you have to connect. So it's a deeper business. What I want to ask you is this. Number one question will be about how can we improve upon the infrastructure, they address the international challenges on distribution and all of that. Secondly, how can we get states to raise the colossal capital? You are saying the states don't want to do anything. It's because the entry cost is very high. You saw how Lagos had problems with AES. It wasn't that an easy ride for Lagos back in the days. You are even seeing what we're expending on Azura and the likes. So the initial setup cost, how are the states going to be able to get this initial setup cost to be able to stabilize and now build up the distribution lines?
Rufai, you and I are saying the same thing. You are talking about entry cost. I agree with you. The entry cost for electricity is much higher than telecoms. But so the tariff. The tariff for electricity is much higher than telecoms. So you put in more money in the electricity, you get more money out. I mean, Bonga Southwest just announced $20 billion of investment. So you are saying that the entry cost is high, and that is exactly the problem. The problem is that the people who have these licenses in the electricity sector in Nigeria don't have the capital to pay for this entry cost. But if you give it to competent, well-resourced operators, they will bring in the billions of dollars that are needed, and they will build this infrastructure with this high entry cost, and they will deliver electricity to Nigerians even at a fraction of the current cost. Why are they being allowed to sit on these licenses when they don't have the money to pay for this entry cost? That is the question.
Mr. Agule, very briefly before we go. Now, we've been dealing with the issue of legacy debt. 4 trillion. We have said on this table that since March 2025, that legacy debt has even increased. But now, under power sector debt reduction initiative, the federal government now says, oh, they are raising a bond. I think they've been able to raise about 501 billion naira, which they said was 100% subscribed. How does that solve the problem of legacy debt? Because except you solve that debt problem, it doesn't look like we're going anywhere. And as we are speaking, Japan is going to have an election. Energy is the main subject in that Japan election. They are targeting even 1.1 trillion kilowatts for a country of just 53 million people. Here in Nigeria, we are over 230 million. We are talking about generating 5,000 megawatts of electricity. Legacy debt, would that move us forward in any way?
Mr. Abati, Dr. Abati, you are very correct in terms of your comparison. Nigeria is the worst when it comes to energy poverty in the whole world. In fact, if you look at the United Arab Emirates, where our president just came back from a business trip, there are 12 million people in United Arab Emirates, and they are getting 45,000 megawatts of electricity on the grid every day. Whereas Nigeria's 200 million plus people, like you have said, we're talking 5,000 megawatts on the grid. It is so poor that this economy cannot lift off the ground. And that is why we are talking a budget of $40 billion. Nigeria, 200 million people, budget of $40 billion. And Brazil, with equivalent population like ours, they are talking about $1.2 trillion of budget. So Nigeria is like a father with 20 children in the market with 40,000 naira. Then Brazil is another father with 20 children in the market with 1.2 million. You can see that the father that has 40,000 in that market is never going to bring prosperity to his children. Never. So we must take this conversation to the front burner. Electricity must be what every policy maker is thinking about, because without electricity, this economy is never going to do well. I'm not a doomsayer. I'm not a pessimist. I'm just saying the reality that if you don't energize an economy, it's not never going to do well. In fact, the United Arab Emirates, where the president just came back from, 12 million people generated GDP of $570 billion in 2025. And Nigeria's over 200 million people generated only 285 billion. So the United Arab Emirates, 12 million people, doubled our output, because we're not properly energized. So for me, the president is okay to now remove the debt, a hidden debt as it was, and to now issue bond. Making it a bond now is part of our debt structure, but they must go back to that privatization of 2013 and fix it.
All right, thank you so much for your time with us, Mr. Agule. This conversation is one that must be had and must continue to be on the front burner until we're able to move out from being one of the highest with energy poverty in the world.